So yeah, I work for the Government Internal Audit Agency, and I'm going to tell you a bit about how we're using large language models in our work, what we're using them for, and what the kind of problems have been. Yeah, GIAA formed in 2015. And it's mostly an organization of auditors, and we're in the data analytics team. We're not auditors, we're data analysts. And some of our main goals are partly to provide analytical support for any audits that involve large amounts of data, but also to develop applications, web apps to support auditors and make their jobs easier. One of the main products, well, the main product, I guess, of the agency is audit reports. So we produce about 1,500 reports a year. And this is the data analytics team at the moment. So yeah, what are we using, or what are we attempting to use generative AI for? Firstly, the breadth of audits that GIAA covers is quite wide. So we don't just do financial audits, we do audits on lots of different areas like workforce planning or well-being policies in an organization. And also auditors can move about between different teams. So they might be working with DWP and then move to working on MOJ. So yeah, they need to become kind of experts quickly in unfamiliar topic areas in new organizations. So using generative AI to kind of brainstorm the risks that an organization might be facing is really useful. Obviously, audits can involve reading large amounts of text, processing large amounts of information. So yeah, making manual tasks quicker is a key goal. We've also got a lot of previous audit reports, and one of the things that customers really want is cross-government insights. So to know what are other government organizations doing well, how are other government organizations solving this problem. So being able to draw insights from many different audit reports, find the relevant ones and find the most relevant bit of those takes a lot of time. And lastly, improving consistency in how audit reports are written and how risks are articulated, etc. So yeah, we've got a set of growing web apps that are kind of used at different stages of the audit pipeline. So we've got a couple that use, well, in the project planning stage, we've currently got the risk engine, which I talked about at Shiny in production a couple of years ago. So it's like a brainstorming tool to help auditors explore the risks that are associated with a particular business objective. We're also developing something called the Foresight Engine that scans news articles and tries to identify upcoming risks that might be relevant to a given organization. In the fieldwork stage, we've got the Insights Engine, which is in grey because at the moment it doesn't implement generative AI. It does use topic modeling, LDA topic modeling, and also just enables auditors to search large amounts of, say, audit reports quickly to identify particular areas of interest. And we are at the moment implementing generative AI in that, so that auditors would be able to ask from a large amount of audit reports, what are the common problems that are coming up over and over again? What recommendations are commonly being made in this area, etc. We've also got the stats engine that we're developing. And the idea is that somebody would, have a large amount of data and be able to ask questions about it quickly, identify outliers, that kind of thing. And then lastly, the report drafting stage, in which takes rough notes that auditors have written and drafts the report. We've also got the chat engine, which is just like a standard chatbot, basically, that can be used across all stages. So I don't want to go into this too much because I did cover this at Shiny in production a couple of years ago. But just the main thing that I want to say is that we've got apps at both ends of the spectrum. So the risk engine is very kind of formulaic, and the user just has to input their business objective or the business objective of the organization that they're auditing. So here I've put in integrating generative AI into our Shiny apps. And then every time they click one of those buttons, it sends a prompt to GPT 4.1 at the moment. Yeah, a predefined prompt. So the user isn't writing their own prompts at all. They're using predefined prompts. So everybody who uses this app is using the same prompts basically to perform their task. Whereas in the chat engine, it's a much more flexible tool where the users have to think about how they want to use the app themselves, what they want to use generative AI for. We've tailored the tool to be specifically useful to UK internal audits working for the civil service. So here I've asked about creating a medium-term financial plan for the TRA, and it knows, well, it guesses correctly that that's relevant. That's talking about the Trade Remedies Authority, whereas obviously if they were using Copilot, it would probably guess that incorrectly. So we have tailored it, but in general, they need to decide what context they put in there, what they're asking it to do. So yeah, it's a lot more flexible. We found, interestingly, we have an app monitoring Power BI dashboard that we keep an eye on. And we found that the writing and the chat engine, so the writing engine is kind of in the middle of the two, pre-optimized prompts that everybody can use, and it also allows them to write their own prompts. So yeah, we found that the writing and the chat engine are becoming more and more popular internally, and the risk engine slightly less popular, whereas the risk engine is really well received with external organizations, because we also offer some of our tools to other government organizations. And yeah, we think there are a couple of reasons possibly. One is that auditors are highly trained in articulating their own risks. So they're very familiar with the process. They know what should go into a well-written risk. They know. So yeah, they're quite familiar with that process. Whereas people in external organizations might not necessarily be risk experts, but they're very interested in exploring the risks that their organization faces. So they benefit a lot more from having a really guided step-by-step process where all they're having to do is put in their business objective. So, and also I think over the past few years, obviously people have become a lot more familiar with using generative AI themselves. So becoming a lot more familiar with writing their own prompts, a lot more they know what to do with a chatbot a lot more. So yeah, I think the pros and cons of how flexible the tool is and how much work the user has to do themselves are going to be influenced by how experienced people are with the process that you're automating, and also how comfortable they are using generative AI. And obviously that's going to change in the organization over time. One of the big challenges that we faced is encouraging people in the agency to use the apps. So I guess auditors are naturally very risk averse and might be quite skeptical about using generative AI. And so, yeah, I think one of the main things that you've found is that, having data analysts tell internal auditors how they should be doing their jobs doesn't come across very well. So having early adopters and internal advocates within each team who can tell their colleagues about how they've found these apps to be useful is a much better persuasive tool, much better at persuading people to just give it a try. So we've got an app monitoring dashboard, as I said. This just shows the monthly number of users for each one, but we've also got this at the user level and at the team level. So it's really helpful in enabling us to identify the people who are using the apps more often. We can go to them and say, would you mind speaking at a lunch and learn session and telling everybody else about how you've been using the apps? And that might generate ideas for other people. Also, it helps us to identify teams that are not using the apps very much, and then we can go and engage with them and say, what is it that are the blockers, and how can we help make the apps more user friendly for you, or more useful for you? We've also found that one of the main questions we were getting when users could put their own prompts in was, what prompts do you suggest we use? What do you have examples? So we put together this Power BI dashboard that's like a scenario library, so people can submit their own prompts and their own use cases. These are all like catalogued here so that people can look for inspiration. How have other people used the app, and what prompts did they use? So yeah, because often the best ideas come from the people who are actually using the apps in their everyday jobs, rather than from us sometimes. So yeah, the prompt libraries are really encouraging people to share ideas and how to use them. Having the senior buy-in was extremely useful. So having team leaders who encourage their team and say, have you tried using the risk engine? Have you tried using the writing engine to improve grammar, etc., really is helpful in kind of building habits within the team. Also, within the data analytics team, each of us is responsible for engaging with each of the audit teams. So I've got 3 audit teams that I'm responsible for engaging with. And I think having engagement leads is really helpful for, people are much more likely to come forward with, I'm struggling with this aspect of using the app. They're much more likely to do that if they've got a person they are familiar with that they can go and speak to, rather than just emailing a mailbox. They're also much more likely to give you constructive feedback, because at the beginning we were struggling quite a lot. We knew that quite a few people maybe didn't want to use the apps, but they weren't telling us why. So having those engagement leads is really useful. And then lastly, I think it's interesting, and I've seen this in another talk, somebody saying that often people who are the most skeptical are often the people who have the highest expectations. So they often expect the AI outputs to be absolutely perfect and a finished product. Just making sure that that's communicated really well, that this is not going to give you a perfect product. It's not going to give you the answer, all of the answers to the questions. It's a tool that you can use, but it's still up to you what information goes into the audit report, what opinion the audit report has, etc. So yeah, making sure that they understand that all of the outputs need very careful checking, editing into is really important. That it's going to give you a starting point, but not get you all the way there. Some of the challenges we've had, I think, especially with the earlier models, and we are a bit limited because we're only using models that are hosted within the UK, because we don't want any of the information people put in to leave the UK. We're using slightly earlier models. Persuading them to use UK spelling, we found really difficult. I don't know if this is a problem that other people have, but we tried so many different prompts, and we got to the point where it would, announce that it was a British auditor, but then still spell things in US English, which was not helpful. So we kind of gave up a little bit. Well, we still have prompts in there, but we also use an R package, which is just a glorified dictionary between US spelling and UK spelling, to convert any stray spelling differences that kind of creep in. We also find that, yeah, I'm sure everybody else finds this too, that say if you give it a piece of text and say, find the recommendations in here, or what recommendations should I make from this? And if the organization is actually doing everything really well, it likes to just make up recommendations. And so, or sometimes tell you how you can make the writing engine better, or just random things. Yeah, having follow-up prompts to get it to check its own homework, to say, this is what the input was, this is the output. Did these two definitely match up, or is there anything that should be taken out? Is really valuable. Yeah, obviously, we do lots of work trying to get the model to stop using US English spelling, etc., and then you switch to a different model and it's less of a problem. So yeah, that's probably a slightly obvious one. I think I'm finished, actually. So yeah, thanks. Thank you for listening.